The Last Hope. The crystalline dome of the Aryan Alliance's last sanctuary shimmered under the light of 3 distant stars. Inside, Commander Zerl stood before the High Council, his 4 arms crossed tightly against his chest. His pale blue skin had lost its luster, and the bioluminescent patterns that normally danced across his face had dimmed, a physiological response to the stress that had plagued him for weeks. Counselors. Zerl's voice echoed in the chamber. The Void Harbingers have taken the Nixian system. That makes 17 worlds in less than a stellar cycle. Elder Thava, the eldest of the counselors, her skin wrinkled and translucent with age, leaned forward. And our defenses? Failing. Zerl's reply was blunt. The Harbingers adapt to every strategy, every weapon. The combined fleet lost 60% of its ships at Nixia. We're running out of options. The council chamber fell silent. The Void Harbingers had appeared at the edge of the galaxy 3 cycles ago, a hive-minded species of almost mechanical precision. They didn't conquer worlds. They consumed them, breaking down all matter into base elements to fuel their endless expansion. Diplomacy had failed. Weaponry had failed. Species after species had fallen, either exterminated or absorbed into the collective. There is one option we haven't considered, Zerl said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Elder Thava's eyes widened, the violet irises flashing with recognition. No, the beacon is forbidden. The beacon is our last hope, Zerl countered. The legends say. Legends, spat Counselor Vex, his reptilian features contorting. You would risk everything on ancient stories. Zerl stood his ground. The histories are clear. 2,000 cycles ago, when the Crimson Plague threatened to wipe out all sentient life, it was the humans who found a cure. When the stellar devourers emerged from the dark spaces between galaxies, it was human technology that drove them back. And then the humans vanished. Elder Thava said. They left no colonies, no outposts. They deleted their star charts from our databases and activated the quantum barriers around their systems. They made it very clear they wanted no further contact with the Alliance. They also left the beacon, Zerl reminded her, a quantum-entangled communication device that would reach across any distance. They said to use it only in the most dire circumstances. If it even still works, Counselor Vex muttered. If there's even a chance, Zerl pressed, we must take it. The Harbingers will reach this system in 20 rotations. This is our last stand. The council debated for hours, voices rising and falling like the tides. In the end, desperation won out over caution. With a solemn nod, Elder Thava authorized the activation of the beacon. 3 rotations later, Zerl stood in the ancient chamber where the beacon had been preserved. The device was deceptively simple, a small obsidian cube etched with glowing blue symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. According to the instructions left by the humans, activation required only a single touch and a spoken message. Zerl placed his hand on the cold surface. People of Earth and her colonies, he began, voice steady despite his fear. The Aryan Alliance activates this beacon in accordance with the Treaty of Sol. We face extinction at the hands of a species called the Void Harbingers. They consume all in their path, and our weapons cannot stop them. We request aid as allowed under Article 7 of our ancient pact. Please respond. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the cube pulsed once, twice, and fell silent again. Zerl waited, hope fading with each passing moment. 3 hours later, as he prepared to leave the chamber, the cube suddenly flared with brilliant blue light. A voice, calm, measured, and eerily devoid of emotion, filled the room. Beacon message received. Authentication protocols confirmed. This is Admiral Helena Vega, Earth Defense Command. Stand by for transit. Zerl's heart raced. Transit? What transit? His question was answered as the air in the center of the chamber shimmered and distorted. Space itself seemed to fold inward, creating a doorway where none had existed before. A single figure stepped through, a human female, tall and straight-backed, wearing a dark uniform adorned with subtle insignia. "Commander Zoril?" she asked, her eyes, a startling shade of green, locking onto his. How do you know my name?" Zoril stammered. "How are you here?" "The nearest human system is irrelevant." Admiral Vega cut him off. "You activated the beacon." We responded. "We've been monitoring the situation with the Harbingers for some time." Zoril felt a chill run down his spine. "Monitoring? For how long?" "Since they entered this galaxy." Her expression remained neutral. "We needed to understand their capabilities, their intentions." "People are dying," Zoril said, anger rising. "Entire civilizations have been wiped out while you observed." For the first time, a flicker of emotion crossed the Admiral's face, something that might have been regret. Humanity has learned through bitter experience that intervention without understanding often creates greater problems. But we've gathered enough data now. We're ready to act. "What exactly can you do?" Zoril asked. "The Harbingers adapt to every weapon we deploy. Their shields absorb energy. Their hulls regenerate. Their tactics evolve with each encounter." Admiral Vega nodded. "Yes, they're remarkably adaptive. But adaptation requires time and exposure. They can't adapt to what they've never encountered." She raised her wrist, activating a holographic display that expanded to fill the chamber. It showed the Void Harbinger fleet, thousands of biomechanical ships arranged in their characteristic hexagonal formation. "Your weapons are based on focused energy and conventional physics," she explained. "The Harbingers have had millennia to perfect their defenses against such technology." Humanity went in a different direction. The hologram shifted, showing a sleek vessel unlike any Zoril had seen before. It seemed to drink in the light around it, its surface neither reflecting nor emitting any visible spectrum. "This is the EDS Thunderchild, our lead vessel. One of 50 we're dispatching to your location." 50 ships. Zoril couldn't hide his disappointment. "The Harbingers have thousands." Admiral Vega's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Numbers are irrelevant. You'll understand soon enough." She closed the hologram. "I need to speak with your council immediately. We have preparations to make before the Harbingers arrive." The council meeting that followed was tense. Admiral Vega stood calmly before the gathered leaders, outlining the human plan with clinical precision. "Your remaining fleet will form a defensive perimeter around your homeworld," she explained. "Their primary function will be to contain any Harbinger ships that attempt to flank or escape our main assault." "And what exactly will your 50 ships be doing?" Councillor Vex asked, skepticism dripping from every word. "Ending the threat," Vega replied simply. Elder Thava leaned forward. "Admiral, forgive our doubts, but we've lost thousands of ships trying to stop the Harbingers. How can 50 vessels, no matter how advanced, make a difference?" Vega nodded, as if she'd expected the question. "Allow me to demonstrate." She activated her wrist device again, and a small metallic sphere appeared in the air before her. It hovered at eye level, spinning slowly. "This is an infiltration probe. Standard issue for reconnaissance." She turned to Zoril. "Commander, your most advanced shield technology, if you please." Uncertain, Zoril signaled to the guards. One stepped forward, activating a portable shield generator. A blue energy field shimmered into existence around the sphere. "This shield," Zoril explained, "can withstand sustained bombardment from our heaviest weaponry. It's similar in composition to the Harbinger's defensive systems, though not as powerful." Vega nodded. "Observe." She made a simple gesture with her hand. The sphere pulsed once, a barely perceptible ripple. And then, the shield didn't fail. It didn't overload. It simply ceased to exist, as if it had never been there at all. The council chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Zoril stared, his mind struggling to process what he'd just witnessed. "What? How did you?" "Phase shift technology," Vega explained. "We don't attack shields. We sidestepped the entire concept of shielding by operating on different quantum frequencies. That's impossible, Counselor Vex whispered. For you, perhaps, Vega acknowledged. Humanity has had 2,000 cycles to develop in isolation. We chose to focus on understanding the fundamental nature of reality itself. Elder Thava's voice trembled slightly. If you possess such technology, why didn't you stop the Harbingers sooner, before so many died? Vega's expression hardened. As I explained to Commander Zerl, we needed to understand them first. The Harbingers aren't simply consuming for resources. They're searching for something. We needed to know what and why before we intervened. And do you know now? Zerl asked. We have a working theory, Vega replied. But more importantly, we know how to stop them. Our fleet will arrive within 16 of your rotations. That should give us enough time to prepare your world for what comes after. After, Elder Thava repeated. Admiral Vega's green eyes seemed to look beyond the council, into some distant future only she could see. Victory has consequences, Elder. The galaxy will change when the Harbingers fall. Best we're all prepared for that change. As the council meeting adjourned, Zerl escorted Admiral Vega back to the beacon chamber, which had been converted into temporary quarters for the human representative. Questions burned in his mind, but one pressed most urgently. Admiral, he began carefully, what did you mean about the Harbingers searching for something? Vega paused, studying him with those unsettling green eyes. They're looking for us, Commander. For humans. What? Why? Because long ago, before we withdrew from galactic affairs, we destroyed something precious to them. Something they've never forgotten. She turned away. Get some rest, Commander. The real work begins tomorrow. As Zerl left the chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that in calling for humanity's help, the Alliance had invited something into their midst that they didn't truly understand. A force perhaps as unknowable and as dangerous as the Void Harbingers themselves. The awakening. The 16 rotations passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Under Admiral Vega's direction, the Aryan Alliance repositioned their remaining fleet, installed mysterious human devices throughout their defense grid, and evacuated as many civilians as possible to underground shelters. On the final day, Commander Zerl stood on the observation deck of Alliance Command, watching as the Void Harbingers emerged from hyperspace, a vast swarm of biomechanical ships that blotted out the stars. Their central vessel alone dwarfed the largest Alliance cruiser, its surface rippling with what looked like muscles and tendons beneath a metallic skin. Magnificent, aren't they? Admiral Vega had appeared silently beside him. In their own way. Zerl couldn't suppress a shudder. I see nothing magnificent about them. No. Vega's expression was thoughtful. They've achieved perfect unity. Billions of minds working as one. No disagreement, no dissent, no waste of resources or purpose. No freedom, Zerl countered. No choice. Vega nodded. Precisely why they must be stopped. She tapped her wrist device. The Earth Defense Fleet has arrived. Zerl looked back to the viewport just as space itself seemed to tear open. 50 rifts, like wounds in the fabric of reality, appeared behind a Harbinger fleet. From each emerged a human vessel, dark, sleek predators slipping into the battlefield with eerie silence. They're outnumbered nearly 100 to 1, Zerl observed, anxiety churning in his stomach. Numbers, Vega repeated with that same cryptic half-smile, are irrelevant. The command center erupted in activity as the battle began. On the main display, Zerl watched as the Harbinger ships moved to engage the human fleet, their formation shifting into an attack pattern that had shattered countless Alliance armadas. But the human ships didn't form a defensive perimeter. They didn't launch fighters or fire energy weapons. Instead, they simply waited. The first wave of Harbinger vessels opened fire, brilliant beams of destructive energy lancing across space toward the human ships. Zerl held his breath, expecting to see shields flare or evasive maneuvers. Neither happened. The energy beams passed through the human vessels, as if they weren't there at all. Holographic projections, Zeril asked, confusion and hope warring in his voice. Vega shook her head. Phase-shifted reality. The harbingers exist in one quantum state. We briefly exist in another. Their weapons pass through us because, at the moment of impact, we're simply not there. On the display, the human ships finally began to move, not away from the Harbinger fleet, but directly into it. They passed through the enemy vessels like ghosts, leaving ripples of distortion in their wake. And where those ripples touched, Harbinger ships began to change. Some simply stopped, their lights flickering and dying. Others twisted in on themselves, their biomechanical forms contorting as if in agony. A few simply disappeared, leaving behind nothing but expanding clouds of elementary particles. "What are you doing to them?" Zeril whispered, both awed and horrified. "Quantum destabilization," Vega replied. "We're not destroying their ships so much as altering the probability of their existence." Within minutes, a third of the Harbinger fleet had been neutralized. The remaining vessels began to retreat, attempting to regroup around their central command ship. "They're adapting," Zeril noted, recognizing the shift in tactics. "Yes," Vega acknowledged. "Faster than we anticipated." "Interesting." She issued a series of commands in her own language. On the display, the human fleet regrouped, forming a sphere around the retreating harbingers. "New approach," Vega explained. "We're shifting to containment protocols." The space between the human ships began to distort, visible ripples connecting vessel to vessel until they had created what looked like a net of warped reality. The Harbinger ships inside this perimeter suddenly slowed, as if moving through thick liquid. "Time dilation field," Vega said. "We're slowing their temporal perception by a factor of 10,000. It gives us time to analyze their adaptations." As she spoke, something unprecedented happened. The central Harbinger vessel, enormous and menacing, emitted a signal. Not an attack, but a communication frequency. "They're hailing us," Zeril said in disbelief. In all the years of conflict, the Harbingers had never attempted communication. "Put it through," Vega ordered, her expression revealing nothing. The main screen flickered, and for the first time, Zeril saw a Harbinger. The creature was vaguely humanoid but clearly artificial, a synthetic body housing biological components. Its face was a smooth, featureless oval with 5 glowing red sensors arranged in a pentagonal pattern. "Humans," the Harbinger's voice was a harmonious blend of synthetic tones. "After 63,000 cycles, you reveal yourselves again." Admiral Vega stepped forward. "You recognize us." "The collective remembers," the Harbinger replied. "You destroyed our Nexus world. You shattered the unity of our consciousness. You condemned us to fragmentation and loss. You were consuming sentient species," Vega countered, "absorbing them against their will. We were offering transcendence." The Harbinger's tone remained even. "As we offer it now. Cease your attack. Join the collective. Your technological understanding would elevate us all." Vega's expression hardened. "And if we refuse? Then we will continue to search for the knowledge you denied us. We will continue to grow, to learn, to adapt. And eventually we will overcome even your phase shift technology." "Not today," Vega said simply. She nodded to someone off-screen, and the human fleet shifted formation again. The ships aligned in a precise geometric pattern, and energy began to flow between them. Not weapons fire, but streams of data, of possibility, of quantum potential. The Harbinger seemed to sense what was coming. "Wait." "No more waiting." Vega cut it off. "No more worlds consumed. No more lives ended to fuel your search. You don't understand what you took from us," the Harbinger insisted, its harmonious voice taking on an edge of what might have been desperation. "The knowledge was everything. Our purpose, our future, our transcendence. Without it, we are incomplete." For the first time, Vega's composure cracked slightly. "The knowledge wasn't yours to take. It wasn't meant for any of us." She made a final gesture, and the human fleet activated their primary systems. No explosive bursts, no dramatic energy discharges, just a subtle ripple that expanded outward, encompassing the entire Harbinger fleet. On the screen, the Harbinger representative seemed to flicker, its form becoming indistinct. "Please," it said, the harmony of its voice fracturing. "Mercy. We only want to be whole again." Vega's voice was quiet but firm. "Find another way." The ripple intensified, and the Harbinger ships began to transform. They didn't explode or break apart. They simply changed, their complex biomechanical structures reverting to simpler forms. The process continued, molecules breaking down into atoms, atoms into subatomic particles, until nothing remained but clouds of elementary matter. The command center was silent, every Aryan staring in shock at where, moments before, the most terrifying force in the galaxy had loomed. "What did you do?" Elder Thava finally asked, her voice barely audible. "Probability cascade," Vega explained. "We altered the quantum state of their molecular bonds, forcing their matter to regress to its most stable form." "You unmade them," Zerl said, struggling to comprehend the scale of what he'd witnessed. "They were artificial constructs," Vega replied. "Living technology, yes, but created for a purpose that ended long ago." "What purpose?" Elder Thava asked. What was this knowledge they spoke of? Vega was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice held a weight Zerl hadn't heard before. "The universe is older than any of us understand," she said. "Long before your species or mine evolved, others walked the stars. They discovered something, a fundamental truth about reality that allowed them to transcend physical existence entirely." She gazed out at the dissipating clouds that had once been the Harbinger fleet. They left their discovery behind, the knowledge, as the Harbingers called it. When humanity found it, we made a choice. We destroyed the records, scattered the fragments across dimensions where they couldn't be reached. "Why?" Zerl asked. "Because we weren't ready," Vega said simply. "No species is. The knowledge offers godhood without wisdom, power without understanding. The Harbingers would have used it to consume everything, believing they were offering salvation. And humanity." Elder Thava pressed. "Why did you withdraw from the galaxy after destroying this knowledge?" "To protect others from us," Vega admitted. "And to protect ourselves from temptation. We've spent 2,000 cycles developing technology, philosophy, ethics, preparing for the day when we might be worthy of what we found." "Are you?" Zerl asked. "Worthy, I mean." Vega's smile was sad. "No, not yet. Perhaps not ever. But we've learned enough to know our limitations, and to help when we're needed." In the days that followed, the human fleet began the process of restoring the worlds damaged by the Harbingers. Their technology, incomprehensible to Alliance scientists, could rebuild entire ecosystems in weeks rather than centuries. As the recovery efforts progressed, Zerl found Admiral Vega preparing to depart. The beacon chamber had been restored to its original purpose, the obsidian cube glowing softly as it prepared to open a pathway back to human space. "You're leaving already?" Zerl asked. Vega nodded. "Our work here is done. The galaxy needs to heal and grow on its own terms. Will we see humans again?" He pressed. "Or will you disappear for another 2,000 cycles?" "That depends," she replied, "on what you and the other species do with the opportunity you've been given." "What do you mean?" "The Harbingers weren't wrong about everything," Vega said. "Unity has value. Working together, sharing knowledge, building something greater than any single species could achieve alone. That's a worthy goal. You're suggesting we form a new alliance, one that includes all species." "I'm suggesting you have a choice," Vega corrected. "Continue as you were, with each species focused on its own interests, or build something new, something better." She stepped toward the now active portal, then paused and looked back. "The beacon will remain. If you need us again, truly need us, we'll answer. But try to solve your own problems first. That's how growth happens. As Admiral Vega disappeared through the shimmering doorway, Zerald stood alone in the ancient chamber, contemplating the future. The Aryan Alliance had called for help in their darkest hour, and humanity had answered, not with conquest or demands, but with the gift of a second chance. What they would do with that chance remained to be seen. But for the first time in years, Zerald felt something he'd almost forgotten: hope. In the starry vastness above, the last human ship winked out of normal space, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed by their brief return. And the knowledge that somewhere beyond the quantum barriers, humanity watched, waited, and prepared for a future only they could envision.